Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into some really big questions, looking at philosophy, spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand religion, the self, reality itself.
Mm-hmm. And we're using Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga as our main source material here. It's the yoga of knowledge, so it fits perfectly.
Right. So the mission, I guess, is to kind of strip back all the layers, the rituals, the dogma.
Exactly. And find that core impulse, what actually drives people to believe. And maybe uncover that non-dual truth, that oneness that these teachings often point towards.
Okay, and right off the bat, the sources hit us with something pretty striking. They say that religion, out of all the forces shaping humanity, is arguably the most potent.
Yeah, it's a huge claim. Stronger than race, stronger than climate, even stronger than ancestry, it suggests.
That says a lot about,
Yeah.
well, about faith and how deeply it's embedded in us.
It really does. It points to some universal human need, something beyond just biology or where you happen to live. And for centuries, scholars have tried to pin down where this power comes from.
Right, the origin question.
Yeah. Usually they land on a couple of main theories. The first one is often called the spirit theory. Think ancestor worship.
Okay, like the ancient Egyptians, with the pyramids, the mummification,
Yeah.
all that effort to keep the body intact.
Precisely. Because they believed the spirit, the sort of living double, needed the body to, well, survive, I suppose. The focus was inward on the spirits.
Gotcha.
And the second theory.
That looks outward. It's the idea that religion started when people tried to understand the big, scary forces of nature.
The sun, storms, earthquakes, things they couldn't control.
Right, so they personified them, gave them conscious forms, gods and goddesses.
So one theory looks inward to ancestors, the other looks outward to nature. They seem almost opposite.
They do seem to pull in different directions, yeah. But
Yeah.
the sources we're looking at, they kind of synthesize these. They say the real root, the common thread, is this fundamental human struggle to get beyond the limits of our senses.
Oh, okay. So whether you're trying to grasp a spirit or understand a storm, you're reaching for something more than what you can just see, hear, or touch. You're trying to connect with something beyond the finite world. It seems man just isn't satisfied with only the finite.
That feels like a key insight, that drive to go beyond the senses. So if that's the impulse, where does it lead? If you're trying to move past the everyday rational mind.
It leads you to seek what the texts call the supersensuous state. It's described as a level of awareness beyond waking, beyond dreaming even, sometimes called ecstasy or inspiration.
And this is supposedly where the core insights of major religions come from.
That's the claim. The rishis who composed the Vedas, they were called seers of mantras. They supposedly perceived timeless truths in this state.
Or the Buddha under the Bo tree.
Yeah.
It wasn't just thinking things through, it was a transcendent realization.
Exactly. They accessed truths that reason alone couldn't grasp. And there's a philosophical consequence to this. If you're trying to grasp the infinite using finite tools like our senses.
You can't really do it, can you? The infinite is too big, the sense is too limited.
Precisely. Which means, according to these sources, that all organized religions, deep down, have to rely on what's called a unit abstraction.
A unit abstraction. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Think of it like, well, stripping away all the specific-sensory details.
Yeah.
What you're left with is something abstract, something conceptual. It might be an abstract presence, or maybe an abstract personality we call God, or an eternal moral law.
Or like Brahman in Hinduism, an abstract essence.
Right. It's always a concept that exists outside the limits of the sensory world. That's the common ground, philosophically speaking.
Okay, so if we're fundamentally built to reach for this infinite, this abstraction, what does that imply for, say, ethics, for morality? Because we usually tie that to social rules, right?
Fair.
What's good for society now?
It leads to a pretty strong critique of purely materialistic ethics. The argument is that something like utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number, just isn't enough on its own.
But hang on. Utilitarianism seems pretty practical. It aims to reduce suffering for real people right now. Why isn't that a solid foundation? Why drag the infinite into everyday morality?
Because the sources argue it's too temporary, too narrow. It's based on current social needs, which change. It doesn't account for that deeper part of human nature that's always pushing against the finite.
So if happiness in this life is the only goal,
then the question, why should I sacrifice my happiness for someone else's good, becomes really hard to answer purely on utilitarian grounds. There's no eternal why.
okay. So ethics, to have real teeth, needs that connection to something beyond the immediate, beyond the sensory. It needs that struggle towards the superconscious.
That's the argument. Otherwise, morality lacks a truly deep foundation.
So it's like science conquers external nature stars, physics, biology. But religion's job is the inner conquest, conquering our own passions, feelings, our will, which feels infinitely harder, actually.
It's definitely presented as the grander task. And to even begin that inner work, you have to grapple with who or what the real man is, the soul, the Atman.
Which brings up that classic mind-body problem, doesn't it? Does the physical body produce thought? Or does thought or some kind of force create the body?
And these texts come down firmly on one side. Force, or thought, manifests the body. The idea that consciousness is just a byproduct of brain chemistry is seen as, well, missing the point or confusing cause and effect.
Is there an argument for that? Because the materialist view is pretty dominant today.
There is. They challenge the idea that matter is primary. They argue that solidity itself is just a state of force.
How so?
There's this interesting analogy like a thought experiment. Imagine a single thread from a spider's web.
Okay, very fragile.
Right. But now imagine moving that thread at an almost infinite speed. The argument is it would become incredibly hard, like iron, strong enough to cut through solid oak.
Wow. Okay, so matter isn't fundamental stuff. It's just force appearing solid because of its state.
That's the idea. Force can't really evolve out of inert matter. Instead, force manifests the appearance of matter.
Okay, if we run with that, if the Atman, the real self, is this pure force or spirit,
Yeah.
it can't have a shape or form.
Correct. Formless, shapeless.
And if it has no form, it must be everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Omnipresent.
Exactly. And this is where our usual rules start to break down. Time, space, cause, and effect. These are seen as constructs of the mind.
Things the mind uses to organize experience.
Right. But the Atman, being beyond the mind, is therefore beyond time, space, and causation.
Okay, that's a big leap. And then comes perhaps the biggest leap.
The highest speculation, yes. If something is truly infinite, it cannot be two. There can't be multiple infinities.
Wait, explain that. Why not? My mind just pictures two endless things existing next to each other. Why is that philosophically impossible?
Because if you had two distinct infinities, they would inevitably limit each other. Where does infinity A end and infinity B begin? The very boundary makes them both finite.
The act of separation creates limitation.
Precisely. So, the inescapable conclusion is that the real man, the Atman, the ultimate reality, must be one and infinite.
So the me and you that we experience, these separate individuals,
Are just temporary limitations, like reflections or maybe dim projections of that single, undivided, omnipresent spirit.
and forgetting this oneness, believing we truly are these separate little bodies and minds, that's the core mistake. That's Maya.
That's the root of the ignorance, yes. The moment you think me and mine, you create separation. And that separation is the doorway to, well, all the trouble and suffering in the world.
Maya is described as the universe being a contradiction, right? Neither fully real nor fully unreal.
Exactly, a mixture. And this is a tough one. Good and evil are presented as fundamentally bound together in this state of Maya.
That feels quite bleak. The idea that wherever good increases, evil also has to increase. Like more knowledge brings more potential for mental suffering.
It highlights the inherent duality of this level of existence. It suggests you can't have perfect, lasting happiness within Maya because the system itself contains these built-in oppositions.
So the game seems rigged, in a way. How do you get out?
The path proposed is renunciation.
Which sounds like giving everything up, becoming a hermit.
That's the common misunderstanding. It's not really about physically abandoning the world. It's about mentally giving up the false world, the world you've constructed based on limited sensory information.
So renouncing the illusion of separation.
Yes. True renunciation is seeing the infinite, seeing God everywhere, in everything. You don't even destroy desire, you deify it.
Deify desire. How does that work?
Well, say you desire a long life. Instead of just wanting personal longevity, you transform that desire into wanting a long life of service, of helpfulness, of connecting with the infinite in your actions. You put God into the desire.
It's a complete reorientation of your inner world. There's that story, isn't there? The lion cub.
Ah, yes, the lion cub raised by sheep. It's a powerful analogy.
How's that one?
So this lion cub gets separated from its mother, ends up with a flock of sheep. It grows up eating grass, bleeding, feeling fear just like the sheep. It has no idea it's a lion.
It thinks it's a sheep.
Completely. Until one day, a huge, fierce lion comes across the flock, sees this bleeding lion cub, and gets Well, probably confused and maybe a bit annoyed.
Understandable.
So the big lion drags the cub over to a still lake and forces it to look at its reflection alongside the lion's own reflection.
And the cub sees.
It sees its true nature for the first time, and instinctively a roar comes out, not a bleat. It realizes what it is.
Wow. So the message for us, for the listener, is wake up.
Essentially, yes.
Ah.
The message is you are lions. You are souls, pure, infinite, and perfect. All the power of the universe isn't out there somewhere. It's within you.
And connecting back to ethics, that realization changes everything.
Absolutely. If you truly grasp that I am the universe, this universe is one, then doing good isn't just a nice idea or a social rule.
It's just the natural consequence.
It's a logical necessity. Why would you harm another part of yourself? Sympathy, compassion. These arise naturally from feeling that fundamental sameness everywhere.
And if you don't see that unity, if you stay stuck in dualism,
And you're always dealing with separation. Dualism typically involves a separate, personal God, often one who looks rather like us, has favorites, dislikes others.
which inevitably leads to conflict, right? My God is right, yours is wrong.
It creates the potential for it, certainly. Exclusiveness. Advaita, non-duality, cuts through that. If everything is ultimately one who is there to hate, who's there to fight, it brings a sense of immense inner strength because the power isn't located in some external being. The power is you. It is reality.
Okay, let's zoom out again to the cosmic level. How does this perfect unified one become, well, this messy world of temporary separate things? The sources talk about involution and evolution, but maybe not in the way we usually think of them.
Right. This is a really interesting point. The principle is involution precedes evolution.
Meaning, nothing can come out that wasn't already in.
Exactly. Nothing can be evolved or manifested that wasn't already involved or latent within the system from the start. Like potential energy becoming kinetic energy, the output can't exceed the initial input.
So the universe isn't just randomly developing complexity. It's unfolding something that was already there.
That's the perspective. It moves in cycles, Kelpes, from subtle, fine forms to gross, physical forms, and then back again to subtle.
That kind of flips the script on progress, doesn't it?
You're
So
right.
if we think about the highest potential, say, cosmic intelligence or God,
That intelligence, that potential perfection must have been involved right from the beginning, even in the simplest starting point, like the protoplasm.
wow. So the perfected human, the Christ man or the Buddha man, isn't someone who became perfect through effort alone.
But rather someone in whom that pre-existing involved perfection fully unfolded or manifested. We're not creating perfection, we're uncovering it.
Realizing what was always there.
Yes, and this has huge implications for how we view birth and death.
Because if the soul, the Atman, is omnipresent, eternal, beyond time and space,
Then birth and death can only apply to the changeable parts. The physical body, and even the mind, the fine body.
so the feeling we have of arriving, of leaving, of being born and dying, that's not happening to our true self.
It's described as a kind of hallucination produced by the change of this fine body. The real you is never born and will never die.
That leads to the ultimate statement, doesn't it? The idea of freedom.
It's perhaps the boldest claim in this whole philosophy. The idea that we feel bound, that we think we're limited, is simply self-hypnotism.
And that mistaken belief is the only real evil.
Yes. Because freedom isn't something you achieve, it's your fundamental nature. If the soul could truly be bound by anything external, it couldn't logically ever become free. It would mean freedom wasn't its nature to begin with. But the premise is you are eternally free.
So if we feel weak, if we feel fear, where does that come from if our nature is infinite power and freedom?
It comes from ignorance, from that delusion of being the small separate self, believing the hypnosis.
So the knowledge itself is the antidote.
The realization is the antidote. Understanding and truly feeling, you are the one being in the universe that's presented as the medicine the world needs for its weakness and fear.
And the practical outcome, the utility of this knowledge?
It's described as transformative. When you achieve this realization, your entire perception shifts. Fear, friction, hatred, jealousy. They lose their grip because their basis separation dissolves. The universe changes from feeling like a prison.
Into a playground.
Exactly. That's the promise.
That's the goal state, isn't it? Being a Jivan Mukta, someone living free, even while still seemingly in a body, navigating the world.
It's about applying that perfect non-dual knowledge within the relative dualistic world, living the truth of oneness.
The understanding is laid out, the potential is supposedly within us, but shedding that deep-seated hypnosis, that feeling of being small and separate, That remains the real work.
Absolutely. The path isn't presented as easy. It's described metaphorically as being very difficult, like walking on the edge of a razor.
Sharp. Requires intense focus.
Yes. But the final thought, the call to action, isn't one of despair. It's built on the certainty of that inherent freedom and perfection. It's a call to perseverance. Arise, awake, and find the ideal, the goal. Don't stay asleep in the illusion.